Hello, my wonderful, beautiful friends, guys. Welcome back to our /PettyRevenge, where people get little wins on others and the stories are super satisfying. And in today's episode, we've got Karen thieves, nasty customers, and one OP tells a story about the time she destroyed her husband's life, guys. So sit back, relax, and please remember this voice only on the DarkFluff YouTube channel. Let's dive in. Several years ago, I was waiting in a grocery deli line to pick up some potato wedges for my wife. Now, this line wasn't a long line. I was 4th or 5th in line and the last person in it. That's when Karen walks up with who I presumed to be her daughter or granddaughter. Anyways, she keeps trying to jump the line each time a person was served, and the patient deli worker just kept telling her she needs to wait her turn. Of course, Karen's getting more and more frustrated that she can't do what she wanted. The guy before me goes, and I can hear her telling her daughter, "This is effing ridiculous. We just want some wedges." Now, this being petty revenge, we know exactly what I plan to do upon hearing that. We finally get to my turn and Karen tries to jump again. Only this time, I pipe up and I let her know the end of the line is behind me. She didn't like that at all, exclaiming, "This is BS. It's first come, first serve." The worker and I just stare at her until she walks back to her irritation area off to the side. And that's when I see there's a scant few potato wedges available. So I tell the worker I'm gonna need more than what's available, and he says I'll need to drop some more. It's about a 10-minute wait. Knowing what the lady wants and that it's not there, I say he can help her. They go through the same process, which irritates her even further, but then she says something like, "Fine, might as well wait at this point," and she steps aside in a huff. The new wedges are brought out, and I see her start to move like she's gonna jump in front of me. But I remind her that I'm next to order. The deli guy asked how much I want, which is usually in pounds, and I quietly say, "Hey, I want all the wedges." He confirms and says, "All of them?" To which I respond, "All of them." He cracks up a bit and he says, "Sure thing," and gathers them for me. I start walking away slowly so I can see the aftermath, and that's when little Miss Karen shouts, "That idiot did what?" She then whips her head around to me. Now, I wish I could say that I locked eyes with her and I ate a wedge right in front of her face, but alas, that idea came to me as I recounted the tale to my wife at home. It was the best $14 I've ever spent. Now that is the ultimate petty move, guys, and I'm sure OP made that deli worker so happy. But yeah, not only did Karen not get the fries, I don't think she knows what first come, first served actually means, guys. And this person comments, "As someone who's worked in a deli, I've had similar things happen to me. I can with confidence say that you made that deli worker's day by doing that. I guarantee that guy still tells people about the time an inconsiderate customer got her comeuppance." I worked in engineering contract for a while. They were pretty open-ended, like a lot were, with a vague but not binding length specified. Kind of like, this contract is expected to be for 12 months, but it's at the will of the employer and could end earlier or be extended further. And for those that do that kind of work, usually they stick to the vague timelines, and a lot of well-performing contractors get extended. Anyways, one day, our team of 10 let 3 of the contractors go. They were told, "This is your last day," at 4 p.m. Me and another contractor asked our sponsor, "Hey, how come we didn't give those guys any notice?" And that's when he says brightly, "That's why we hire contractors, so we can cut them loose at a moment's notice whenever we want to." We didn't love that answer. Also, it was a weird thing to say to 2 other contractors. He basically told us that we would get no notice and we would be let go instantly someday. Anyways, long story short, the other contractor was a very sharp guy. He starts interviewing and he gets another job. He told me about it and I didn't tell anyone else. It started in a few weeks. He just kept right on working the contract job and was right in the middle of a bunch of work that only he understood. At 5 p.m. on his last day, he just stands up, grabs his laptop, mouse, docking station, and walked to our sponsor's desk and sat them down. He then said, "Hey, thanks for everything. This is my last day." To which the guy responds, "Wait, you're leaving?" And he just said, "Yes, thanks," and walked out. That was it. It was really funny. His work was half done. The guy didn't answer any calls or questions about it, and it took us about a month to figure it all out and get that project back on track. If the sponsor hadn't been so delighted about being able to fire contractors at any second, that guy would have definitely given a nice 2-week notice, and there would have been a smooth handoff of his work. Yeah, some people seriously need to remember the golden rule: treat others how you want to be treated. And gotta love the fact that OP's contractor buddy got to throw it back into that guy's face. And not only that, but it set them back a whole month to try to get that project back on track. Funny how a guy like that expects 2 weeks notice, right? And this person says, "I worked in construction and I've had coworkers fired with no notice. My boss, the owner, said he wasn't required to give any notice in our industry. I worked for that company for a little more than 10 years. When the writing was on the wall for me to move on, I worked my shift and I found my boss at the end and I told him I was done, effective immediately. He practically begged me to stay and train a replacement for the machine I run daily. I told him he had 10 years to figure out a backup plan, and since I no longer work for him, it's none of my business. He asked why I didn't give any notice, and I regurgitated his line, how no one required to give notice in our industry. My favorite part of the conversation was when he asked if I could at least come in for a few complicated jobs that week, and I said it was akin to breakup sex, and no. 2 years ago, I drove into a parking lot with my wife and kids. There seemingly was only one place left, but a BMW parked a little too close to the line and left almost no room. I talked to the attendant and she said that's the last spot. The system handles capacity automatically, so I carefully drove in and parked about 3 centimeters from the other car. I actually had to get out of mine through the passenger side. When I went to leave, the BMW was gone and 2 of my tires were flat. I called the parking attendant over and showed her, and she called the manager who said they would send someone within the hour. My wife and kids took a taxi home and I stayed there waiting, but I was pissed. I called the police and asked the manager for the video. They wouldn't give me the video without an official police complaint, so I made one and the manager had me contact their legal department to take it from there. A few minutes after finishing up all the police and legal stuff, the mechanic shows up. The guy fills my tires and I went home. I had to hound the parking company for almost 3 months until they sent the police a copy of the video. Once the police had the full video, I was able to amend my original complaint to vandalism and directly identify the guy that did it from the camera and license plate. A few more months and I get a letter inviting me to an arbitration. I reply refusing and I say this will be handled through the judicial system. A week later, I get a call from Daddy's lawyer offering me some money to forget about this whole thing. The kid was mad, he made a mistake, I should be reasonable and not let this go too far, etc. I tell him no to everything and ask not to be contacted again. A few more weeks go by, and at this point, it's about 6 months after the incident, and I get a court date 11 months in the future. Every couple of months, I get a call with different offers from different lawyers to drop the case, all of which I make sure to amend to the case documentation. When the court date finally comes, there's the kid with Daddy and their lawyer, and me with mine. They make one last effort to work out a deal, but I deny again. The case is over pretty quickly, as the video's horribly damning to this guy's case. You can clearly see the kid walk up, look at my car, make a few angry gestures, then pull out his car, get out, and deflate my tires. There wasn't much he could say in his defense. It rules in my favor, and the verdict is common vandalism, and is assigned 50 days fine at 50%, which works out to around $1,700, plus 90 days of house arrest. They did appeal, but this was thrown out a few weeks ago. And just last week, I got the news that the verdict is now final. The payment deadline has been set to October 10th of this year, or else home arrest becomes jail time. They called yesterday asking for my bank account and made the transfer today. So Monday, I'm reporting payment received and the end of this 2-year journey. So Martin, I don't know if you use Reddit or not, but enjoy your house arrest, and too bad your university doesn't accept house arrest as a valid excuse and you'll lose all credits this cycle. Maybe think about that next time you want to screw with someone else's stuff. You know what? The best part of this story is you know that kid's done similar things many times and he's always squirmed out of it with daddy's lawyers and money. But hopefully this time, the kid does learn a lesson that some people don't put up with that kind of BS. Again, good on OP for teaching that kid a much needed lesson. And guys, these next 2 posts are about thieving Karens getting embarrassed. So about 6 months ago, I had a layover in Houston. After deplaning and going through security, I realized my headphones had fallen out of my pocket. So I submit the lost item claim with United, and I gave the description of the silicone case they had on them, the plane information, seat number, the whole thing. I also set it to lost mode, and I included my phone number to call me. I emailed United a few times stating that I could see they had moved from the plane to what seemed to be the United office space. I now realized it was probably employee lockers. After about 24 hours, I see them go to an apartment building. I watch them go from the apartment building to the airport, back and forth, and I track the schedule. I gave United the address of the employee, their schedule, and what days they had worked. Surely the home address and schedule was enough to pinpoint who it was, so they could at least deal with it internally. I also wasn't exactly excited to get the AirPods back if they had been wearing them. United told me that because the AirPods had left the property, they wouldn't do anything, and I had to file a police report with Houston Police Department. I live in Arizona, and they closed my claim. And this is my petty revenge. I use the Find My a lot for various AirTags and things. So for the last few months, whenever I see my lost headphones with the earbuds out, I hit play sound on the earbud and I blast this person's ears out. I can see them quickly go back into the case. And the thing is, if they would have called me when they found them, I happily would have sent a reward, enough to buy their own basic pair, as I do understand they're expensive and not everyone can swing a pair. I'm slowly working towards making this person go deaf, so no one else loses a set of headphones to them. I think this is the pettiest thing I've ever done. And this person comments, I was visiting some friends in another city and I dropped my AirPods in the back of a lift leaving a bar. I realized the next morning and I sent the guy a lost item report. He claims he doesn't have them. So I go back home and forget about it until a day later, I can see in my Find My that they were being charged and actively used. I see them moving all around the city as a driver would. Now, I'm not usually a spiteful person, but that was brazen theft. Unlucky for him, I had some free time, and 2 weekends later, I tracked him down in a car with those same friends. The Find My app leads us to a Chuck E. Cheese, and we found the guy's car in the lot. I explain the situation to the security guard, and I show him a picture of the Lyft driver. The security guard led us right to him, and I asked him, "Are you so-and-so?" To which he nervously responded, "Yes." I just bluntly said, "You stole my AirPods, you effing idiot." In the end, his family had to all leave the Chuck E. Cheese. They walked to his car parked in the lot, and I got to watch him awkwardly put them back in the case and hand them to me. I did feel bad, but come on, doing that is insane. So I really didn't take part in this, but it happened right in front of me, and I thought it was great material for this sub. Here's some context. I work at a big family-owned car dealership, which has high-ish turnover, which means we're constantly hiring new salespeople. When hired, they get a box of 500 business cards for free, and after that, they have to pay for their own. This person, who we'll call Tim, was hired a little over a month ago, and on his free box, he had 499 cards. The box never have 500 exact. They usually have over 500, not exactly sure why this happens, but the boxes are slightly bigger, so they tend to have over the 500 cards it's supposed to have. So that said, here's the story. I make the order of the business cards with X company. A week ago, Tim asked me to order him a box, and he says to me, "And make sure you don't screw it up like last time. My box better have 500 business cards." Now, I took this as a joke since I don't know him, and I just told him, sure. A week goes by, and the guy from X company comes to deliver the business cards. I paged him so he could come and pick up his cards. He comes in really annoyed, and he asked, "What the F do you want?" I told him Company X is here with his cards, so he needs to go speak with them to retrieve them and pay for them. He gives me an even more annoyed look, and he huffs and went. And this is how their conversation went. Tim says to the company guy, "So you're the idiot that can't count, huh?" The company guy says, "Excuse me?" Tim says, "Yeah, on my last order of business cards, I had 499, not 500, you moron." The company guy says, "Oh, I see. I'm sorry about that, but they never have 500 cards. We really don't count them. We just put enough to fit the box, which usually ends up being over 500. Tim says to him, "Well, I don't give a crap. I'm paying for 500, so I better get 500. You better count my cards right now and make sure I have all 500, or else I'm not paying for them." The company guy sighs and he says, "I don't really see the need of this, but sure, let's count them for you." He starts counting them in front of Tim, and the count ends up being 516 cards. The company guy says, "Oh, I'm sorry about this. I'll just burn these 16 extras later." Tim says, No, you can leave those. You owe them to me because of last time." Company guy tells him, "You said you wanted 500 cards, and you're only paying for 500, so that's all you're getting." After that, he threw the extras in the shredder box. Tim did look angry, and I felt happy for what I witnessed. And after that, Tim just left, and he went to smoke with a very annoyed face. The company guy looked like he was gonna have a nice rest of the day. So I have a story that isn't too terribly crazy, but it definitely fits here. My ex-husband was a problem. I didn't mind the myriad of health conditions he had, but the fact that he refused to take care of himself was the real issue, especially when his problems caused me to lose the very little sleep I was getting. I worked for a terrible corporate security firm that doesn't really care about its employees. I was the single field supervisor in my region, and on top of my regular 40-hour work week, I was also called on emergency to fill open positions. This eventually put me at a regular 80 to 100 hours per 7-day work week. The money was incredible, but I was miserably exhausted. At the time, my husband was working part-time, and he was receiving SSI, and he was spending all of his income on himself. He would buy video games, fast food against his doctor's order, while I paid for the bills, the car payment, the insurance, the phones, all that stuff. This went on for about 3 years, getting progressively worse as time went on. Despite the amount of money I covered for him, I still managed to bump my credit by paying off my car, and I saved enough to buy a house. Nothing too fancy, but it's a 2-story with an unfinished basement, plenty of space, decent-sized yard, creek, and has really cool neighbors. who constantly invite us over to drink and play pool. While moving, I was still working 80+ hours and I couldn't spare time to help much, but I paid for the moving truck and dinner for anyone willing to help us pack and move. I asked my then husband to make sure everything gets packed. The guy packs all of his own belongings and then the household furniture, and then ignored whatever didn't fit. If that wasn't bad enough, he was late returning the moving truck and I had to call about the fee, which they were very kind enough to waive considering my circumstances. The result was that the majority of my stuff, my roommate's stuff, and my brother's stuff didn't fit in the moving truck. My brother was making trips every day after work to pick up a carload and bring it home. I asked my ex-husband to please do the same, and he agrees. 3 weeks later, I finally got a day off. I worked a 12-hour shift and I planned to go pack up a few boxes and take them home while I was out. I walked into the house and I saw my ex-husband had literally done nothing. 3 weeks, he said he'd been moving our stuff and he hadn't touched a thing. And let me tell you, I had a meltdown. My legs gave out from shock and I just sobbed on the stairs. My roommate and best friend happened to also come in right after me and found me on the stairs. He held me while I cried and assured me that he would take a few days off to get everything packed up and moved. He told me to go home and sleep, but I told him I'm already here, so I might as well take a few boxes since my worthless husband lied to me about doing so. He helped me pack up some things and I drove home. I didn't even bother to unload it. I just went inside, collapsed on my bed, and cried myself to sleep. Hours and hours later, I finally woke up a groggy mess. I make my way out to my car to start unloading. My best friend was there unloading his own car with a tired smile. He had been going all day and the sun was setting. Meanwhile, my husband was slacking off in the basement doing who knows what, breaking his promise. We managed to get everything moved, but I did have to extend the lease by 1 week and pay a pro-rated rental cost, all due to my husband's neglect. I was quickly racking up anger at him, and finally, when we were moved, I sat him down and I told him how angry I was about the lies, his laziness, and what he caused. He starts accusing me of all kinds of things in return, like how I wouldn't passionately hug him because of his medical issues. And that's when I lost it. I screamed at him that I don't passionately hug anyone. I don't even passionately hug myself because I'm working the equivalent of 2 jobs with overtime to support his lazy butt and pay for his lifestyle because he wastes all of his money on fast food that he shouldn't even be eating and video games. I told him he doesn't lift a single finger to do anything around the house, like unpacking, cooking, cleaning, nothing to make my life easier. In fact, he's actively making my life harder. I'm still cleaning up after him when he leaves dishes everywhere and stains in my carpet. So no, I don't want to passionately hug you if you're not gonna do anything to earn it. He went radio silent on me for 2 weeks. It got progressively worse. He wouldn't text me, speak to me, answer my calls, and eventually he wouldn't even look at me. Meanwhile, he's still living off my money. So one day, I finally message him to ask why he's treating me this way, and he ignores me. I ask several other questions, nothing, and finally, I tell him if he hates me so much, he needs to divorce me. He tells me the next day he wants a divorce, and I ask why. And you're not gonna believe this answer. He says these exact words to me. He says, "You don't do enough for me." And oh boy, did he mess up. I tell you, this ding-dong is the absolute most obtuse, smooth-brained, intellectually deficient, situationally unaware, half-witted, opossum-brained dumbass to say that. And this is when I unleash it. I told him everything I do for him and I pay for everything so he can live the cushy lifestyle he lives. That I give him a roof over his head, food in his belly, money in his bank account, and I take days off specifically to spend time with him, that I was doing absolutely everything for him, and this is the repayment I get. I got extremely quiet and bucked into his chest, pointing my finger at his face, and I told him that since he wanted the divorce, he had to file. And if he even suggested at forcing me to sell my house that I paid for, I would destroy his life. I let him know I would hire an expensive lawyer, force him into the longest court battle of his life, and take him for every single penny he would ever earn for the rest of his life, along with the court costs, even though I know he doesn't earn much. I then kick him out. He moved out, and he told me he was moving in with his family a few cities over, and he asked me to file. I file in my county because it was closest. He raged at me when he found out. He wanted me to file online and pay an extra $270 out of my pocket. I told him no. A few days later, I get a strange text from him that didn't sound like him. I argued with him, and then a confession was made. It was his girlfriend. He had lied to me again and moved to New York from Georgia. She went psycho on me, and she screamed at me via text about how abusive I am. And yes, I did laugh at how dumb she was. Long story short, we argued, and I told her I wouldn't be speaking to her again. And I'm filing in my county because I started the process, and I'm not changing my mind because he lied to me. Months go by, and finally the date comes. She drove him to Georgia, and they were 15 minutes late. And I knew this because I was 15 minutes early, and the clerk asked if I could contact him. I went outside to do so, and I saw her roll up. I told him she's not allowed inside because I hate her. He nodded, and up we went. We spoke to the clerk and start the paperwork. I have some legal knowledge, definitely a ton more than him, due to curiosity and things that happened to me in the past, so I knew which questions to ask. I know how lazy this brat of a human is. He hates doing anything he doesn't have to do. So I remind him in front of the clerk that he still had property at my home, and I want it all out of my house. The clerk told him that anything he leaves on my property after a certain date will legally belong to me, and there will be no way of getting it back without my express consent. He asked if he could work something out with me, and I told him no, you'll have to adhere to these legal guidelines. Anything left afterward will be forfeit. Now, while we were together, his mother passed, and I loved that woman. She was a saint, and I wanted something of hers to remember her. He inherited her dining rug. While not worth a lot monetarily, it's still a lovely black and red antique. And the thing is, I knew he couldn't afford to ship it, nor could he afford to rent a moving truck, nor could he fit it in his girlfriend's tiny, crappy car. So while he was crying and loading up his mother's belongings, all of which he left behind when he left initially, I told him I'm keeping this rug. I said this flatly and without feeling. He tried to argue, so I point out the obvious, and he conceded. Despite wanting the rug to remember his mother by, he knew I was right. And that rug is one of my favorite belongings. It sat in our unfinished basement, and it currently resides in a lovely guest room that houses my bookshelves, king-size bed, and a 55-gallon fish tank that's not yet home to anything. And for even more good news, I married my best friend, and we've been together for nearly 4 blissful years. On our 5th anniversary, he's agreed to a ceremony since we were married in a simple ceremony with only 2 witnesses. And for more petty revenge, I still have my ex's childhood art binder, which he cherishes. And I'll continue to hold it until he pays me back the $400 he owes me for the brand new tires I put on his car, a few weeks before he decided he wanted the divorce. It's been over 4 years, and I'm never giving it back at this rate, and I do send him annual reminders. I don't know about you guys, but I absolutely love how petty OP got at the end. Like, it's something small enough that you can't fight me on it, but big enough that it'll sting you forever. That said, like, what a piece of work OP's ex-husband was, right? Like, that's the least she could have done in my opinion. And I'm just glad OP got to have her little win in the end. And that, my friends, brings us to another end of r/PettyRevenge. Guys, I hope you enjoyed today's stories. If you did, hit that thumbs up. And if you're not subscribed, consider subscribing so you don't miss these crazy stories. And if you missed the last episode on the channel, it's an r/malicious compliance episode, where OP teaches their bad boss a lesson they won't forget after not giving him a raise. It's a wild episode, so go check it out if you haven't, and myself and Stevie Boy will see you guys in the next one. We love you.